What's up, everybody? Today I'm looking at 5 projects that are changing the landscape of Baltimore. This is a little bit different content than I have been doing, but I think it fits in nicely with some of the short videos I've been putting out showing how dramatically some of the streets are changing in Baltimore, both for the better and some would argue for the worse. So these 5 projects are master plan style projects where it's not just building a building, it's not just building a couple buildings, it's completely changing the vibe of a neighborhood. So I'm just going to get started with these. I don't have any script planned or anything, so I'm just going to kind of wing it. But the first one is the one that is being spearheaded by Kevin Plank of Under Armour fame, and that is the Baltimore Peninsula. Now this one, it originally started with some other name, I forget what it was, but this is in South Baltimore, and as you can see, this whole area is built up. And it's previously had been kind of an abandoned, deserted former industrial area. So I think a lot of people would argue that this project could do a lot of good for the city. Some people have argued that it will detract from the city because it's away from downtown, and as we could be putting resources into the existing part rather than building new parts. But it is pretty remarkable what they've built so far from basically nothing being there prior. They've had to build all this infrastructure, all these buildings, and this is only a few years into the project. Now, going back to the original drawing that we have, you can see this is only this section over on the right hand side. It's not even halfway done, and going back to these Google Images shots, I mean, you can see it's pretty dramatic, the changes that have already occurred. Next up, you can't talk about development in Baltimore without talking about Harbor Point. This is one of the projects that's been going on for the longest in the city. It's actually sort of approaching its end, but there's still a couple of the largest buildings that haven't been built yet. So if we go back and check on what we're looking at, this is the site of a former chromium plant. As you can see, there's all kinds of construction going on in here, and it's just a big, billion-dollar downtown project. This is, a lot of people would say that this one is, sort of for the elite, which, isn't wrong, but it's creating a lot of jobs, and it's on a site that really hadn't been utilized in decades. So all in all, I think there's a lot of good things going with it. As you can see, this one also, this is a little bit older of a street view back in 2019, but you can see all these buildings are new in the last 10 years, and that's really changing the face of the waterfront downtown. It's also starting to grow big enough that it's tying into nearby Fells Point. So it'll be interesting to see those fully built out and how they come together. So next up, we're headed over to the east side of Baltimore, where we're going to look at the Old Town Somerset Perkins project. So the Perkins homes are over here in southeast Baltimore, and have been demolished. And then you also have over here you have the Old Town Mall complex, which is mostly abandoned. It's in very rough shape, as you can see. A lot of it hasn't been used in decades, but this area is all being redone. The project started. It hasn't obviously made it onto the Google image truck yet, but there's a lot of positive things going on in this part of the city. They don't have, that's not it. This is just the Old Town section, Old Town Mall section. So this one's a big project, although maybe not quite as grandiose as the other two that we've looked at so far. But this is a part of the city that has faced a lot of economic challenges and a lot of issues with crime and things like that. So to get this kind of investment in this area, and like I said, this is only the Old Town section. There's also the Perkins section, the Somerset section. So these are Perkins homes were a former public housing project that was demolished in the last couple of years. So there's a lot of a lot of construction that's going to occur on that old site. We can zoom in, and as you can see, some of the demolitions had started, but this map still shows most of the old homes. So all this section is going to be rebuilt. And like I said, this one is not as flashy as the other waterfront ones, but it's definitely needed for this part of the city that's been struggling. Next up, we have another east side one, and this is arguably the most controversial one. This is the one around Johns Hopkins Hospital. And the controversy with this is basically that a lot of people don't like that Johns Hopkins basically flattened everything around them for about a 10-block radius and are rebuilding it, as opposed to trying to do a more cohesive and, build into the old neighborhoods and things like that. As you can see, this was 2009 neighborhood, and now this is what it looks like. Very different. Off in the distance, you can see a lot of the new buildings and some of the older buildings associated with Hopkins. This one is, like I said, one of the more controversial ones. I think a lot of people are benefiting from it. There's also some people who were probably negatively impacted by it, but all in all, this is another one that is in a part of the city that needs investment. You can definitely debate if this is the right style of redevelopment and right type of investment that they need, but I think there's definitely a strong case to be made in support of it. And finally, we're going outside the city. This one's not in Baltimore City proper, but it's not far to the southeast down in the county, and that's the Sparrows Point. This is probably the least flashy of all of them, but I would argue is one of the most important, and that's because it's on the site of the old Sparrows Point steel plant. And if we go back into Google Earth and we go back in time, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So this is the site fairly recently, but if we jump back about, 15 years, you can see the infrastructure for all the steel mill. And it's obviously a big place, and at the time, even when this was shot, which was well past its heyday, it was still a major employer and a major creator of relatively high-paying jobs, stable jobs. But unfortunately, Bethlehem Steel went out of business, and over the years, the old industrial plant was slowly demolished, and then in recent years, now we're up to about 5 years ago, you can see that it's starting to get a different look, and that's because they started adding all these Amazon fulfillment centers, Under Armour, Amazon, a lot of warehousing to keep up with the shift in the trend to the online shopping and just the need for all this logistics space. So that's what it's sort of been rebranded as, a logistics hub. It's not heavy manufacturing like it used to be, but as you can see over the years, this is up to 2023 now. So it's getting built out pretty significantly. There's still some space down at the waterfront, down in the south and west edges of it that haven't been built out yet. But there's a lot of these big warehouses, and even though they may not be the most flashy thing, they're good paying jobs. People aren't going to get rich working there, but they can make an honest living. So I think this one is one of the most valuable additions, because unlike some of the other ones that focus on a lot of the flashy waterfront hotels, waterfront luxury condos, this is one that actually is focusing on creating jobs, creating things that can support people. This is one of the really key projects for Baltimore's future, in my opinion. So that's pretty much it. If you guys are interested in this type of content and want to hear more about development in the city and projects that are in the pipeline and things that may be coming up, let me know, and I'll shift content a little bit. I'm definitely very interested in in the building and construction side of things. So I'd be more than happy to do more videos like this, especially as these big projects are coming along. It's really fascinating to see the changes and how quickly they occur. This area only a few years ago was basically nothing, and now it's turning into its own little new city, new downtown. So, like I said, let me know if you want me to focus on things like this a little bit more. I'll be more than happy to, and drop a like and share if you're into this type of thing, and have a good one.